Everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of May and a very important new moon in Taurus coming up on the 19th. Now, we are still well within this very intense eclipse energy that we've all been feeling, but I actually feel that this second half of May is going to be even more dynamic than the first half. And as I said, May is an incredibly powerful month of change. So I've got a lot to say here. So I hope I can be as clear as I can for you. So one of the big things that's happening in this second half of May is that Jupiter is moving into the sign of Taurus on the 16th. Jupiter is very reliable in its orbit. It has a 12-year orbit. It stays in each sign for a year. And as I said, it'll be moving in on the 16th of May and will stay there until May 2024. So if you actually look back to 12 years ago, pretty much to the month, and see what was happening for you, particularly in the area of life where the sign of Taurus falls in your chart, you may well remember what was happening then, and you will have an echo, a vortexing upwards echo of what was happening then, 12 years ago. So if you don't know where Taurus falls in your chart, you can easily download a free birth chart from my website, pamgregory.com, and you can go to this link below and get a 2-part video series from my store that will explain from zero how to find these signs, these points in your chart for every update I do. And by the way, I'll also put a link underneath because I've got a teaching video, very inexpensive teaching video on Jupiter and Saturn moving through the houses that may be of use to you. But particularly if you have your sun, your moon, your ascendant, or your natal Jupiter in Taurus, this could be a very positive period for you coming up, because Jupiter is known as the great benefic. It is typically the planet of expansion, success, abundance, recognition, and generally it operates positively for us. Occasionally, if there's a problem in that area of life, it can expand the problem, but generally it brings, as I say, those things with it, a sense of expansion, a bigger world, etc., and more success and recognition. So it's moving in on the 16th, and that is going to really, for the next year, put a lot of focus on the earth, nature, the land, food, our agricultural processes, everything that comes from the land, that is tangible, food produce. I think because Jupiter is the planet, as I say, of expansion, but it's also the planet of inflation. It blows up. Then we could see prices of good food, good natural organic food going up. And there's a real kind of split here because, as you may be aware, we have Uranus in Taurus until 2026, and that really pulls in two directions. One side, the Uranian side, pulls in the direction of increased efficiency with food production, increased engineering, if you like, with food. Whereas the other side, the Taurus sides, take us back to the natural, the simple, the traditional methods, the biodynamic farming, that kind of thing. So it's pulling in two directions. And so I think the way Jupiter in Taurus will work, one of the themes will be the increasing cost of very good food, but also the increasing recognition of our need for very good natural organic food. The price of land may well go up with this. Also metals, gold, silver, etc., are tangible materials that come from the land. And I believe over this next year, it's going to be volatile, but we could see some increase in value, some inflation with those. And I'm filming this on the 5th. And indeed, even in the last few days, we've seen some pretty wild swings of gold and silver going up to certainly long-term highs. And I think with gold, it even possibly went up to a record high, but then, it's dropped back down again. But I think we will see the increasing value of things that come from the land, like metals. So That will lead people more into this movement of growing their own food, linking up with local farmers, markets and networks. And don't forget the People's Food and Farming Alliance, great organisation and similar across the world, that are really helping people to go back to their local networks, Aquarian Energy, remember, to buy their food, so they know where their food is coming from. Now, typically, Taurus, as a sign of fixed earth, can bring more stability into a situation. But if we have a situation, Taurus linked with, as I've spoken about before, money, banking, currencies, wealth, Jupiter can inflate any issues that may be happening in those areas. So I think we're going to see, again, this operating in two very different ways. Now, one of the very dominant aspects for this second half of May is a square between Jupiter and Pluto. It's a very tight square and continues for the first half of June, but it's super tight in this second half of May. Now, this is very interesting because when you look at any planetary cycle of two planets, the seed point, the beginning point, is always the conjunction. So when were Jupiter and Pluto conjunct? Well, they were conjunct last time, late March 2020. So Jupiter is the planet of power, governmental power, particularly because it was in Capricorn then, and Jupiter expands. Also at the same time, you might remember that on the 22nd of March, that year, 2020, Saturn went into Aquarius. Saturn limitation, Aquarius freedom. So what happened in that last week of March? Well, a lot of the world went into lockdown. So the astrology was so clear. So now, because we have the first square, really, or a very important square, let's say, of Jupiter to Pluto, it is asking us to evaluate how that process has gone, how that power initiative and how it's worked in our lives since March 2020. So it's a big reevaluation point. And this is going to operate on several levels, I think. On an economic, financial level, when I see Jupiter-Pluto aspects in a person's chart, it's known as the millionaire signature. It very often gives the potential for great wealth for that person, great resourcefulness, because Jupiter expands the power of Pluto. But equally, Pluto is the planet linked with debt, default, deficits, taxes, and Jupiter is going to expand that. Now, we are in a very volatile financial situation, as I expected with that update I did for the lunar eclipse. It's interesting that in one of the last times that, in fact, it was the last time that Jupiter was in Taurus, there was a major crisis around the US debt ceiling. I think there have been several of those, but they actually had to pass a new law. I think it was the Budget Control Act in 2011 while Pluto was in Taurus. We are now coming up to another major US debt ceiling crisis, which will affect many aspects of the economy, on June the 1st, while this Pluto square Jupiter is in operation, expanding the potential for debts and deficits and defaults, etc., and taxes. So it will be very interesting to see how this plays out. So on the one hand, I do believe that things economically could be challenging at the governmental level, at the national level, across many geographies. But equally, I believe that for some and possibly many people, they will become even more abundant, particularly, I believe, if they are operating in service to others, if they're operating from the heart. And clearly, what's happened in the last week suggests that if you can have even a little bit of gold and silver, that may be beneficial for you. I don't know anything about cryptocurrencies at all. I'm not a financial advisor, so this is just speaking purely astrologically. So very interesting. The other important side of this is Pluto as you know, rules Scorpio. It's the planet that's linked to secrets, long repressed secrets, hidden deep down secrets. And it is very much linked to governments and corporations and top-down structures. Now, Pluto is currently briefly in Aquarius. It's going to back up into Capricorn again on the 11th of June, but it's currently in Aquarius at this new moon. But what Jupiter does is blow all this up, bring it all out in the open, if you like a big balloon. And the process of Pluto, as I've often said, while it's moving through a sign, is to reveal any corruption, lack of integrity, accountability, etc., linked to the sign it's moving through. All this is perspective, I'm translating the symbolism very literally and directly here. So Aquarius is the sign linked to science and technology. So putting all this together, this is going to be a very interesting period of time, I believe, following on from the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, which is also about secrets coming to light in a bigger way, and this very powerful aspect between Jupiter and Pluto. I think that could make that writ large, blow it up even more around those issues that that many of us may not have been fully aware of up to this time. So that is going to test our beliefs, Jupiter, and our values, Taurus, because Jupiter is now in Taurus at this time. So that's before I've even shown you the chart. So the potential for fast-moving dynamic change is enormous here. So let me share my screen and show you the chart. So this is for the new moon in Taurus, which is happening on the 19th. It's happening at 8:53 a.m. Pacific and 4:53 p.m. UK time. This is set for universal time. We are on currently in the UK British summer time, so it's an hour ahead. So fantastic time to set a new intention. The perfect time in the month is the new moon. And here the new moon we can see is at always when the sun and the moon come together is at 28-25 of Taurus. Now, as always, I set these charts for the UK. This is where I live. But it's also really based on Greenwich too. And so therefore ignore the houses, ignore the clock face of the chart, just look at where the planets fall and their aspects to each other. As you can see, this is incredibly complicated, so I'm going to try and take this step by step. So first thing to say is see where 28-25 of Taurus falls in your chart. Don't forget to set a new intention for the new seed, perfect Taurus, new seed that you'd like to manifest in your life. We have 5 planets in Taurus here. We have Jupiter, Mercury, Uranus, Moon, Sun, plus the North Node. Massive emphasis in Taurus. Now, as I've just mentioned, Taurus is to do with the earth, with nature, with food, with agricultural food production, money, currencies, banking, wealth, all of those things. So all and any of those could come into prominence at this time. Now, Taurus, as I say, because it's fixed earth, it likes to keep things steady. It wants things to be permanent, for the long term, building for the long term. But if there are any issues around those subjects I've just mentioned, again, Jupiter could blow them up, inflate them, and we may want very much to turn to nature for our stability. I mean, that's always a great place to go. Turn to nature for your stability. Bare feet on the earth, bare feet on the grass, sucking up the healing irons that all the earth has to offer. If you're not familiar with earthing, look at groundology.com. It has some fantastic information about what doing that bare feet on the earth or the grass actually does to your blood and your physiology. Fantastic. So I'm going to, as I say, try and take this piece by piece. Now, one of the aspects that supports building for the long term is this lovely sextile between Saturn, which always wants to build for the long term, and Mercury. Sextile 6 degrees to 6 degrees of Pisces, Taurus. So building for the long term. And what may help that as well is Uranus, which is brilliant new ideas, innovations, originality, is actually at the midpoint of Mercury and this new moon, sun moon. So what that says is many of us may be having these wonderful new ideas around how we can build for the long term and do it differently, do it with innovation in some way. This may also, in another sense, be a period of time, because it's a new moon, it's new beginnings, where we see another step towards some kind of digital currency development. And whatever that is, remember that the energy, the life force, the energy is going towards decentralization, which is Uranus, and Uranus rules Aquarius. That's where the astrological and the life force energy is moving towards, not centralization. Because over these next 2 years, Pluto is moving out of Capricorn, centralization, top down, and moving towards more Aquarian energy ruled by Uranus. But we may seek some kind of another digital currency development, because that's a literal translation of what I'm seeing here. So coming back to the main configuration in the chart, again, so much to talk about here. You can see that there's a big red square here. This is known in astrology as a grand fixed square or a grand fixed cross. And either way, it is one of the most powerful configurations we can have in astrology, to have a grand fixed cross or a grand fixed square, or a cardinal or immutable. But this being in fixed signs, and Mars is about to tip into Leo, which is a fixed sign, on the 21st of the month. In fact, just 2 days after this, it's just out of sign. But nevertheless, this is still predominantly fixed sign, grand square. This is, if people have this in their birth charts, they are incredibly determined, tenacious, see things through to the end, but there isn't much flexibility. They're dogged, absolutely dogged. And so what this can suggest on a collective level is kind of some kind of intractable situation, that some people have particular views about X, Y, Z, and another group of people have totally different views about X, Y, Z. And there's a locking of horns, there's an intractability here. Now that is relieved, actually, by this beautiful trine, out of sign trine between Pluto and the new moon. If Pluto was still at 28, 29 of Capricorn, you could see this more easily. It's out of sign, but nevertheless, it's a very powerful trine to this new beginning of something that is fundamentally different that is beginning here. This new beginning, powerful new beginning. It's fundamentally different, and it is Aquarian. So it's no longer Capricornian, it's Aquarian. It's to do with community, collaboration, grassroots up, people coming together, linked to the earth and nature. I see this very much as, another signature for new earth, all of this Taurus energy. But essentially, this kind of gridlock may be felt very strongly. And there can be a feeling sometimes of frustration. Boy, this is just a boiling, dynamic situation, but how do we break out of the box? And it can also suggest, because of the intractability here, the locking of horns, division and separation in society, seeing things from very different points of view. So, as I've mentioned already, the big aspect here, as part of this grand square, grand cross, is Jupiter square to Pluto, both at 0 degrees of fixed signs. And this actually becomes exact, this square, on the 17th of the month. So 2 days before this new moon. This energy is actually building from 14th, 15th, 16th, all the way up, because we've got that exact square between Jupiter and Pluto on the 17th. Then we have Just a little later in the month, we have Mars coming to square Jupiter on the 22nd. We then have Mars square the nodal axis on the 26th. We have Mars in an exact square to Pluto on the 21st when it moves into Leo. This is just boom, 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 boom. So really from the midpoint of the month, 14th, 15th of May, really pretty much the last few days of the month, this is going to be an incredibly dynamic, fast-moving, eventful, lots of secrets spilling out, lots of challenge to belief systems and to values as a result of that. And also, Mars in this square to Jupiter is fighting for our beliefs. It's got a crusading element to it, you know, going off on the crusades, fighting for your beliefs, fighting for what you stand for. Pluto, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is in this long-term T-square to the nodal axis. That will continue until November, but it's strongest from now till mid-July, when there's a shift in the nodal axis from Taurus, Scorpio into Libra, Aries, Libra. Massive choice point here. Choice point for individuals and the collective. Which way are we going to go in our choices? Are we going to stay with the old world, or are we going to move with the new? And so many of these astrological energies have that kind of split, if you like, that fork in the road, that bifurcation. Because as you may know, Pluto over the next 2 years, I mean, Pluto moves back into late Capricorn on the 11th of June until next January. And then spends most of its time in Aquarius and then moves fully in November 2024, but has a short dart back into Capricorn, September to November 2024. So this is old world and new, top down versus community. And so many aspects in this new moon have that same split. Now, I'm not endorsing the split. I'm just translating the astrology, because ultimately I really do believe we're going to come back to unity consciousness. Absolutely. And that's what we all want. But I think we're going to go through this period of, as the astrology is highlighting, making one choice or the other. Now, really remember, nobody is forcing you to take either road of going with the old world, staying with the old world, or going with the new. Nobody forces you to do that. That is our individual choice. It's a frequency choice, actually, but it's an individual choice. So there's no judgment in this at all. We are all, ultimately, we all have our own ability to make those choices, because it's an internal process of frequency. I hope I'm making sense here. One of the lovely aspects here is that Jupiter is conjunct this North Node, which is this expansive future vision for the collective. North Node is the collective, future collective destiny, this expansive vision. And as I mentioned earlier, that becomes exact on the 1st of June. Another wonderful positive aspect of New Earth coming in here is part of this very powerful grand square, grand cross, is that Haumea, linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, in her fire goddess side, she was said to create the islands of Hawaii. She birthed New Earth, new land, if you like. But she is an incredibly powerful, fertile, regenerative symbol for New Earth. So again, we have the old and the new operating here. I think the other thing which is important to say, if we're thinking about we need to go our own way, if you like, in terms of following community, following the Aquarian energy, following grassroots groups and collaboration, the other thing that really supports this is the dwarf planet Ixion. Ixion I've talked about before, lawless brother of Pluto, in its negative expression, no moral compass, murdered his father-in-law, was ultimately spun off into eternity on a burning wheel. But the very positive expression of Ixion was finding your bliss through simplicity, going your own way, finding your own individual way to enlightenment, actually, and to joy. And that is trine at 4 degrees of Capricorn, is trine to Mercury at 6 of Taurus. And Taurus is about the simple, bringing it back to the simple, bringing it back to nature, bringing it back to food production, bringing it back to feet on the ground. Simple, simple stuff. Nothing complicated, nothing synthetic, nothing artificial. This is really bringing us back to the fundamentals of life. I think the other thing to say about this this new moon in Taurus, just to observe for the next few months, is that if we're thinking about Jupiter blowing up a lot of things that have previously been repressed, that are now coming to light, we also are going to have the North Node, which, remember, moves retrograde. The North Node is gradually backing up into late Aries. It's going to actually shift into Aries on the 18th of July, but even by June, the North Node will have come to conjunct Eris. That will be an operational conjunction with Eris, and it will get tighter and tighter from July through, in the Northern Hemisphere, the summer months into the autumn, through to September, October. Eris, remember, is the feisty street fighter, the truth teller. She's not going to go quietly. She's going to demand justice, equality. Everybody needs to be heard in whatever situation is emerging, blowing up right now. The other thing to say, there's just so many things to say about this. The other thing to say is, although we have this wonderful simplicity and groundedness potentially with Taurus energy, bringing us back to what's important, never mind the hubbub and the noise and the 3D and the nightly news and what's happening on the stock market, bring us back to feet on the grass, is the sun and moon here, the new moon, is actually on a slightly tricky place in the heavens because they are conjunct a fixed star called Algol. And Algol doesn't have a great reputation because it's about the beheading of the Medusa. So it's linked to the theme of decapitation, people losing their heads. Now, this can be people losing their heads in the sense of it's all too overwhelming, I'm going crazy, and sort of mental illness. And I think there's certainly potential for that as we move forwards. And we have to have great compassion with that. But it's also about leaders being taken out of power, losing their heads, losing their position as heads of state. So that's something else, I think, to watch for as well. There's something else. I'm going to stop sharing this particular chart. But there's something else I wanted to share with you that I came across that I think is just interesting to observe. And this is the chart for the New York Stock Exchange, which is set at 17th of May, 1792 in New York. And what is interesting here is that our new moon at 28 degrees 25 minutes of Taurus is just minutes away, 7 minutes away from the midheaven of this New York Stock Exchange chart. So what is the midheaven? I mean, I looked at the Wall Street crash chart in, I think, the last video. So the midheaven is the kind of reputational status of whatever entity we're looking at. So the new moon is pretty much smack on that New York Stock Exchange chart. It's also conjunct the sun, the energy, if you like, of this chart. And what is also interesting just to observe is that Uranus, transiting Uranus, is already at 19 degrees of Taurus. So it is already operationally conjunct to the ruler of this chart, because Mercury rules Virgo, so Mercury is the ruler of this chart. It's already operationally conjunct. It will become exactly conjunct in August, September of this year. So this could bring potentially more volatility, more instability into potentially stock markets, because they tend to be all connected. So I just thought that was really interesting to observe, because a huge part of this shift to the new earth, as we say, I'll stop sharing here, a huge part of this this shift to new earth is some kind of new financial system. I think we all know that. I don't know exactly what form it will take. As I say, I'm not a financial expert, but it will be some kind of new system. That doesn't have to be painful necessarily to transit from one to the other. So we will just observe with these charts. I like to just observe with the astrology and watch what unfolds, because remember, we are a big part of its unfolding. It isn't determined to fall or unfold or manifest in any particular way. It's down to us. It really is down to us, to how this unfolds. In every moment, with every chart I look at, nothing is fated, nothing is predetermined. Every single chart is simply the sheet of music, the modeling clay, and then we as the collective mold it. So really, let's get out of this sense of fatedness or victimization and step into empowerment. Think, right, this is a very dynamic situation of change. How can I mold it to the most beautiful new future that I can possibly manifest? And if we all start to do that, we're going to have a very different world in a short time. Now, I've mentioned in recent videos about this mantra of I welcome in an expanded consciousness of love. I welcome in an expanded consciousness of love. And I think that opens my heart. So let that just roll around your brain. If you're walking, or if you notice that you're getting into negative self-talk, not good enough, young enough, pretty enough, rich enough, just replace it with I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. That's a very good default place to go. But another incredibly simple phrase that occurred to me that might help us, and I'm going to nail this in my brain, and I suggest that you do too. Incredibly simple of I love it when. I love it when. And this has to be expressed when you are in the feeling of I love it then. So I love it when. So for instance, if you're saying I love it when the spring is here, best not to do it when you're still in winter and spring is months away. Say that when you are in the spring, you are feeling, the warmth of the sun on your skin, you're seeing the new leaves come out, etc. I love it when the sun is shining. I love it when the sky is blue. I love it when the birds are singing. I love it when the blossom is out. I love it when I laugh with my friend. I love it when I hug my dog. I love it when I hug my friend. Whatever it is, I love it when. And make that another mantra. Get into the gratitude groove, let's say. So simple to get into let's start a hashtag gratitude groove, because the more of us that can do this as we go through our day and we're kind of on automatic pilot in the brain and we're not thinking of anything in particular, switch it to either I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love, or I love it when. I love it when I'm eating delicious food. I love it when I'm drinking fresh, clean water. I love it when, and it gets your brain to start to shift to a different default point, a different default point of gratitude. So you start to get into a gratitude groove rather than, oh, it's just overwhelming. This is hopeless. It'll never be any different. We're headed for X, Y, Z. Really do try and think of those incredibly simple phrases. And just with all that's going to be happening, I think my feeling is with this second half of May, incredible dynamism. But what happens just in these very last few days of May and going into June, Mars starts to move very quickly in June, really quite rapidly in June. So it breaks up one corner of that fixed grand square, that fixed grand cross. It breaks it up. And then we start to see more movement happening in a direction. And let's try and control that direction as incredibly positive. But the fixity, the intractability of the situation does start to move off quite quickly, very end of May. and into June. So, but if this is all too much, because for many of us, it's just going to be, wow, there's just such a lot going on. Just drop into stillness. Close your eyes. Drop into your breath. Drop into your heart. Drop into warmth, decompression. Feet on the grass. Just loving the simplicity of 100% focus on the breath, 100% focus. The breath slowing, the breath deepening. Absolutely free and available for every single one of us in every moment. Well, particularly if you are able to do that, if you're not on a London bus or whatever. So a lot happening. If you want more information about my books, videos, check out pamgregory.com. Just the very final thing I'd like to touch on, because a lot of people have been writing to me saying, can I have a knee update? So I'll make this brief, but many of you may be aware that last March 2022, I tore my meniscus badly cycling. I hobbled on till July and then had an arthroscopy operation, which repaired the meniscus but made the bone-on-bone pain much worse. And really by October, November, I really could barely walk. So I asked for healing from you, which you were absolutely, you were magnificent. You sent me, so many people sent me healing, and it helped me massively. And the healing, together with the platelet-rich plasma injections using my own blood plasma, this is called PRP. I'll put the link below so you can go and research it yourself. Very simple procedure. The combination of healing and those injections was miraculous, because from being unable to walk, really, I was then able to walk pretty much normally until about 6 weeks ago, when because the knee doesn't quite bend properly, I tripped over a tree root and really twisted and wrenched the knee badly. So there's not a lot of pain then, and in fact, at that point, I booked total knee replacement surgery for next week, mid-May. So, because I thought, I've just got to get this sorted, but I decided really at the last minute to cancel that for now, and I'm going to try and manifest another miracle. So I'm doing a lot of meditation, using different modalities, supplements, lots and lots of things that you've alerted me to. And I mean, you know, a lot of people are in a much, much, much worse situation than I am, for sure. So, you know, I don't want to blow this up as a huge problem, but it is quite a debilitating issue. Yes, it's mechanical, but one way or another, we have to get this sorted. So I'm going to try and, with your help, manifest another miracle. I would be immensely grateful if it's easy for you. I know everybody's got challenges in their life right now, but if it's easy for you to send me some healing for my right knee, I would be hugely grateful. And let's see what we can do to manifest another miracle and avoid that surgery. That surgery is a common operation, but it's still a major operation with potentially a long recovery. So, super grateful for that. And if I could also ask, best not to email me about this, because a very clear message coming through from this knee is working too hard, trying to keep on top of everything, trying to answer everybody's emails, etc. And I feel very guilty if people are kind enough to write that it's just not humanly possible to answer them all. So I know you'll be sending me good wishes, and I know many of you will be sending me healing. So I am hugely grateful for that. I can't tell you the power of that. Is really palpable, and I really feel that. So one way or the other, we are going to solve this issue. So it's another step on the journey, another step in my spiritual development. I'm absolutely sure. God bless. A lot in there. And I hope I've been comprehensible in sharing all of that with you. God bless. Bye for now. Don't forget to set your new intention for the new moon in Taurus coming up on the 19th of the month. And I'll be back very soon. Bye for now.